In the sterile glow of a San Francisco high-rise boardroom, where the fog clung to the windows like a lover's desperate grasp, Rebecca Kline pressed her ear to the oak door. Her lab coat still dusted with a faint metallic tang of petri dishes and hope. At 40, she was no stranger to the shadows of the Castro, those neon-lit alleys where Stonewall's fire still smoldered in the eyes of drag queens and die-hard activists. But this was a dagger in the dark. Her husband, Victor Hale, pharma golden boy with a smile sharp as a scalpel, leaned back in his leather chair. His voice a velvet noose. "The grant's a gold mine, gentlemen. Rebecca's formula could rewrite the game. Cheaper antivirals, faster trials. But if we let her push it through independent channels, poof, margins evaporate. We bury it. Frame it as insufficient data. She gets reassigned or better yet sidelined." Quietly, the board chuckled, a low rumble like thunder over the bay. One silver-haired exec, puffing a cigar that reeked of old money and older sins, added, "And the wife? She knows too much. A lab tech sniffing around our patents. Convenient if she relocates permanently." Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp that tasted like bile. Her resilient curves that had drawn Victor's gaze in the hazy days of '79, when disco pulsed through the bars and AIDS was just a whisper, now felt like a cage. Her gaze, tempered by the embers of Stonewall, where she'd marched with fists raised and hearts broken, hardened into steel. This wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. Her research, born from the ghosts of lovers lost to the gay plague, was reduced to a ledger line. She backed away, heels silent on the marble, heart hammering like a war drum. The fog outside swallowed her as she fled into the night, a backpack slung over one shoulder, stuffed with vials, notes, and a single quilt square from her late mentor, a faded panel stitched with the name Miguel 1982. Victor thought she was at a conference. By dawn she'd be gone. Not to the authorities. No, they were bought. Not to the streets, where PIs lurked like wolves. To the heartland, where the Rust Belt bled forgotten stories, and a woman could vanish into the steam of factory whistles. Little did they know, Rebecca Kline wasn't running to hide. She was unraveling their empire, one thread at a time. And in the stitches of her exile, she'd weave a revolution that would blanket the nation in crimson remembrance. The Castro in 1985 was a fever dream of defiance. Rainbow flags snapped like battle standards against the relentless Pacific wind, while bathhouses hummed with the reckless pulse of lives borrowed against tomorrow. Rebecca had come here in '76, fresh from a biology degree at UC Berkeley, chasing the electric hum of liberation. Stonewall had cracked the world open for her, a dike with a pixie cut and a laugh that could shatter glass, but it was the Castro that stitched her soul back together. She'd met Victor at a fundraiser for the Kaposi Sarcoma Foundation. His charm a Trojan horse hiding boardroom wolves. "You're changing the world," he'd whispered, lips brushing her ear amid the clink of wine glasses and the sob of a violin. Marriage followed in a haze of '80s optimism, before the diagnosis rates spiked like a fever chart, before friends withered to husks under hospital sheets. Her lab at Hale Pharmaceuticals was her sanctuary, a windowless bunker in the mission where she cultured retroviruses under the hum of fluorescence. AZT was the holy grail then, a toxic hammer, but a hammer nonetheless, and Rebecca dreamed of gentler paths. Her grant proposal, accessible nucleoside analogs for community trials, served as a blueprint for generics. Affordable, scalable, and community-driven. It could arm the front lines, San Francisco General's Ward 5A, where ACT UP screamed for access while Reagan's silence echoed like a tombstone. But Victor, he'd climbed the ladder on her back, patenting derivatives while she toiled for the greater good. Their home in No Valley was a modernist cage of glass and teak, filled with artifacts from travels they'd promised but never taken. A Moroccan rug stained with spilled Cabernet, a Bolognese mask that leered from the mantel. Sex had cooled to obligation. Her curves, once celebrated in candlelit trysts, now critiqued in sidelong glances. "Trim down, darling," he'd murmur, eyes on his Rolex. "The board notices everything." The boardroom betrayal shattered the illusion. As she slipped through the fog-shrouded streets, dodging the leers of cruising cops and the haunted stares of men with lesions blooming like purple orchids on their necks. Rebecca's mind raced. Cleveland. Why Cleveland? A cousin's postcard from '82, yellowed in a drawer. Rust Belt blues, but the people here fight dirty and win. The hemophiliacs. Those poor souls tainted by factor VIII, the blood-clotting brew laced with HIV from careless donors. They clustered in wards like MetroHealth, invisible casualties in a war no one declared. There, in the shadow of steel mills coughing black smoke into Lake Erie's gray skies, she could disappear. Become Tessa Lane, lab dropout turned seamstress, stitching masks for the afflicted. The Greyhound bus from San Francisco to Cleveland was a 48-hour purgatory, the acrid reek of diesel and despair seeping into her pores. She sat by the window, watching the Rockies blur into plains, then the skeletal frames of shuttered factories rising like accusations. Her backpack held essentials, a passport under her maiden name, thank God for bureaucratic oversights, $3,000 in traveler's checks from a secret account, her research notes encrypted in a battered moleskine, and Miguel's quilt square, a 12 by 12-inch panel of red cotton, embroidered with "Dance Till Dawn, Loved Till Forever." Miguel, her first love, gone in '83. His body a map of the virus's rage. Beside her, a wiry man in a flannel shirt nursed a flask, muttering about reaganomics gutting the mills. His name was Hal, a laid-off welder from Youngstown. "World's ending, sister," he slurred, offering a swig. "AIDS in Cali, rust in Ohio. Pick your poison." Rebecca, Tessa now in her mind, smiled faintly. "I'll take the rust. At least it builds character." Cleveland greeted her with a slap of autumn chill, the Cuyahoga River's oily sheen mirroring the overcast sky. She checked into a YWCA on East 9th, a drafty brick relic with threadbare linens and a communal bath that smelled of Lysol and regret. "Room for one?" the desk clerk asked, eyeing her city polish. "Jeans too fitted, boots too Italian." "Just passing through," Tessa lied, her voice pitching lower, Midwestern flat. She'd practiced in the bus restroom mirror, softening her Castro lilt. By nightfall, she'd pawned her wedding ring for $800, bought a Singer sewing machine from a thrift shop on Euclid Avenue, and scoured the want ads for hemophiliac support groups. MetroHealth's hematology ward was her beacon, a squat concrete fortress where the tainted bled out their futures. Her first day volunteering was a baptism in blood and bureaucracy. The ward was a limbo of beeping monitors and yellowed curtains, where men, mostly white working class, faces etched with the surprise of betrayal, clutched 4 poles like lifelines. Kids too, pale sprites with bruises like watercolor blooms, their mothers hovering like ghosts. Tessa arrived with a basket of homemade masks, sewn from calico scraps, her fingers still raw from the machine's bite. "I'm Tessa Lane," she introduced herself to Nurse Ramirez, a no-nonsense Latina with arms like coiled springs. "Heard you need help with morale." Ramirez arched a brow. "Morale? Honey, we need miracles. These boys are dying faster than we can chart it. Factor VIII from 83 batches. HCV, HIV, the works. Pharma says, oops. Government says, not our problem. You so?" "Like a demon," Tessa replied, unpacking her basket. The masks were simple, pleated cotton with elastic ties, embroidered with tiny suns to chase the gloom. The patients lit up, tentative smiles cracking like dawn on frost. First connection. Eddie Kowalski, 28, a former auto worker with a hemophiliac's perpetual limp and a poet's soul. His arms were a roadmap of needle scars. His t-shirt faded Ford Motor Company. "These masks, they're art," he rasped, voice gravel from pneumonia's grip. "My ma used to stitch like this. Polish patterns full of fire." Tessa sat by his bed, threading a needle through a fresh square. "Fire's all we've got left. What's your story, Eddie?" He laughed, a wet cough punctuating. "Story? Born with bad blood, raised in the mills. Got the cocktail in '84. Transfusion after a joint blew. Now, waiting for the reaper. You?" "Lost my way from the coast," she said, evading. Found my way here. Sewing keeps the ghosts quiet. Eddie nodded, eyes distant. Ghosts, yeah, my lover too before all this. We met at a drag show in Parma. He was Rita Hayworth on a bad night. Gone now. That night, in her YWCA room, Tessa unrolled her quilt square beside the radiator's hiss. Miguel's name stared back, a talisman. She began a new panel. Eddie's in blue denim from mill scraps, stitched with a wrench and the words, forged in rust. Word spread. By week's end, the stitch circle formed in the ward's rec room, a circle of folding chairs around a formica table, where Tessa taught mothers and partners to quilt. Fabric came from donations. Hospital gowns, old curtains, Levi's frayed at the knees. Stories poured out like pus from a wound. Maria, a Puerto Rican mom whose son Joey bled internally at sneezes, confessed, "The docs say pray. I say sue the bastards who bottled that poison." Tessa's heart twisted. Prayer and pitchforks, Maria. Both work. Into this fragile web tumbled Jordan Reyes, the spark that would ignite it all. He burst through the rec room doors on a Tuesday, all fire and frayed denim. His ACT-up button pinned crooked on a leather vest scarred by tear gas burns. 32, half Puerto Rican, half Irish, with a fade haircut, gold hoop earring, and poetry that could curdle milk or mend hearts. He'd driven from Detroit, where the auto plants coughed up black lung and broken dreams, to rally Cleveland's silent afflicted. "Who's the new blood?" he demanded, dropping a duffel of flyers. "Silence equals death in bold crimson." Nurse Ramirez jerked a thumb. Tessa Lane. Sows hope from scraps. Jordan's eyes, dark as espresso, sharp as switchblades, locked on hers. "Hope. Lady, we need hammers. Pharma's got AZT locked at $10,000 a pop. Kids like Joey. They'll never see it." Tessa met his gaze, unflinching. "Hammers break, threads bind. Sit, sew with us." He scoffed but pulled up a chair, his calloused fingers fumbling the needle like a gun shy of its trigger. "I'm Jordan. Poet provocateur, pain in the ass. You?" "Tessa, survivor." She handed him a square of red velvet, pilfered from a thrift prom dress. "Stitch your rage. It'll last longer than a chant." As the circle murmured, needles flashing like fireflies, Jordan's voice dropped low for her ears. "Survivor, huh? Got that look? Like you've danced with death and stepped on its toes." She smiled, a ghost of her Castro grin. "Danced? Darling, I led." By month's end, the stitch circle had ballooned to 20, spilling into the hospital chapel on Sundays. Tessa's masks multiplied, now with pockets for tissues stained lavender from lesions. Jordan's poetry wove in. He'd recite over the hum of machines, verses like, "Blood is the ink of our betrayal, Pharma's quill dipped in greed's well." The group laughed, cried, and planned. Maria organized a petition drive. Eddie sketched panel designs on napkins. But Tessa's nights were haunted. In her tiny room, she'd pore over her Moleskine, decoding notes on nucleoside tweaks, safer binders, oral formulations. Victor's face haunted the margins. His boardroom smirk, the way he'd trace her scars from a '78 lab accident, whispering, "My warrior." Lies. She wrote letters she never sent. "You thought me soft. Watch me unravel your empire." Health whispered warnings first. A purple bloom on her thigh, Kaposi's signature, from years of unshielded vials. "Lab exposure," the Metro doc shrugged, prescribing painkillers she couldn't afford. "Rest. It's slow." Slow? In the AIDS arithmetic, slow was a luxury. She hid it, stitching through the itch, the fatigue that draped her like wet wool. Jordan noticed. After a circle session, as rain lashed the ward windows, he cornered her in the stairwell. "You're carrying more than thread, Tessa. Spill." She leaned against the rail, fog from her breath mingling with his. Old wounds. Nothing new. His hand, rough from protest placards, brushed her arm. "Wounds don't lie. Neither do eyes. Yours scream exile." The dam cracked. Over black coffee in a greasy spoon diner off Lorraine Avenue, Tessa confessed fragments. Coast life, pharma snake pit. Ran from a viper's nest. No names, no formulas. Just the ache. Jordan listened, his poet's ear catching rhythms unspoken. Exiles a forge, meja. Burns hot, tempers steel. He slid a crumpled poem across the formica. Threads of the forgotten. Lines about blood brothers stitched in scarlet, rising from ashes. She read, throat tight. Beautiful. Brutal. Like us. His fingers laced hers. Tentative as a first kiss. Stay. Build with me. Their romance bloomed in stolen moments. Walks along the Cuyahoga's toxic banks, where herons fished amid oil slicks. Late nights in his walk-up above a Polish deli, where he'd read Neruda while she sketched quilt grids. Jordan was fire, ACT UP rallies in Detroit, where he'd chained to clinic doors chanting, drugs into bodies. But tender, tracing her curves with reverence Victor had lost. You're a landscape, he'd murmur, lips on her collarbone. Hills and valleys, all sacred. Tessa fully now, Rebecca fading like fog, found in him a mirror to her Castro self. They made love to the wail of distant trains, her body a map he navigated without judgment, Kaposi's mark a constellation he kissed like stars. The stitch circle evolved. What began as morale morphed into mission, the Rust Belt Remembrance Quilt, panels for the lost sewn with stories. Eddie designed the layout, a vast tapestry 8 by 8 feet per block, crimson borders framing names. Maria sourced fabric from factory cast-offs. Joey ate and fierce, embroidered suns with shaky stitches. Jordan infused activism. Each panel bore a slogan, no more silence, blood for all. By spring '86, the quilt spanned the chapel floor, a sea of scarlet and sorrow. News trickled in. The Cleveland Plain dealer ran a fluff piece, sowing hope in the shadow of steel. Donations trickled, $50 here, thread there. Tessa's formula itched in her bag. She toyed with leaks, anonymous drops to activist zines. But shadows lengthened. Victor's PIs arrived like crows. Slick suits in clinic lobbies, flashing badges that weren't quite badges. One cornered Maria outside the ward. Seen a Rebecca Kline. Callie plaits, dark hair. Maria, loyal as iron, shrugged. Lady, half the city looks like that. Tessa spotted them from a chapel window, heart seizing. That night, she burned her old ID in the sink, ashes swirling down the drain like prayers unanswered. Jordan held her as tremors came. They're closing in. We fight or flee. Fight, she whispered. With this. She pulled the moleskine, pages yellowed with promise. My work. Generics. Formulas to undercut Hale's monopoly. His eyes widened. Holy shit. You're not just a seamstress. You're a goddamn saboteur. Together, till the threads snap. The leak was a symphony of subversion. Tessa encrypted the notes, simple ciphers from her Berkeley days, and Jordan smuggled them to Detroit's underground press. Motor City Mutiny. By July, mimeographed flyers hit the streets. Crack Hale's code. DIY antivirals for the people. Formulas redacted for safety, but potent. Synthesis paths for AZT analogs. Cost breakdowns showing pharma's gouge. Panic rippled east. Victor's boardroom erupted. Stock dipped 3%. PIs swarmed Cleveland. Tails on Jordan's battered Chevy. A raid on the chapel. Cops claiming suspicious gathering. Scattered the circle. Quilt panels trampled under boots. Eddie, frail as rice paper, shielded a stack. Over my dead body, he wheezed. They arrested him for obstructing, but the charge stuck like spit. Tessa's Kaposi flared, lesions spidering her back, fever spiking like a mill flare. Hospitalized in secret, she stitched from bed, needle trembling. Jordan smuggled fabric. Maria sang rancheras to drown the pain. You're dying for this, he accused one night, voice breaking as he changed her dressings. We're all dying, she countered, threading a sun for Joey. Make it mean something. The quilt's unveiling came in August, a defiant picnic on the hospital lawn. 50 strong, families, activists, steel ghosts, unfurled the beast under a rare blue sky. 30 panels, each a requiem. Eddie's wrench, Miguel's dance, Tessa's secret gift, Jordan's poem in cross-stitch. From rust we rise, blood be our banner. Reporters came, plain dealer, even a stringer from the Times. Flashbulbs popped as Joey cut the ribbon with safety shears. For the ones who can't, he lisped. Tessa watched from a wheelchair. Hidden in the crowd, Jordan's hand on her shoulder. Victor's face flashed on a borrowed TV later. Corporate espionage. We'll sue. But the tide turned. ACT UP Cleveland chapter formed overnight. Chants echoing off mill stacks. Generic trials sparked in community labs. Backyard chemists, mad scientists for justice. Hale's margins bled. Lawsuits flew. Autumn stripped the trees bare. Tessa's body betrayed. Lungs filling with fluid, vision blurring like fogged glass. She refused the ward, choosing Jordan's walk-up, where the deli's pickle brine masked the scent of decline. In her final days, she completed her panel. Black silk from a widow's veil, stitched with a California poppy. Her Castro root, and the words, threads unbroken. Jordan read to her from the growing quilt lore. Chapters opening in Chicago, Milwaukee. Your revolution, he said. She smiled, breath shallow. Ours. Promise me expand it. Every city, every loss. He nodded, tears salting her palm. Till it covers the White House. Her last stitch pricked at dawn, October 12, 1986. No gasp, no rattle, just a sigh like fabric settling. Jordan held her till noon. The city awakening, oblivious below. The funeral was the quilt itself. No casket, no priest. Just the circle in Edgewater Park, Lake Erie lapping like applause. They wrapped her in panels, ashes scattered on the waves. Jordan spoke. Rebecca, yes, her name was Rebecca Kline, didn't flee. She wove. From boardroom shadows to these threads, she bound us. Eddie, out on bail, added a poem. Maria led a chant. Joey placed a sun-embroidered stone on the sand. Hale crumbled by 87. Settlements, scandals, Victor's resignation in disgrace. The quilt? It grew. The Remembrance Project, Jordan branded it, trucking panels to D.C. for the 87 march. Thousands added squares. By 90, it spanned them all, 40,000 panels strong, a crimson tide of memory. Jordan lived to 2015, poet laureate of the afflicted. His verses in textbooks. He never remarried but loved fiercely. Activists, artists, the next wave. On his deathbed, a panel from Tessa beside him. Threads unbroken. Strength may splinter, yet tenderness endures. What survives is not the hammer's fury, but the quiet hands that mend. The hammer fades, but the weave remains, and within its patterns we discover belonging. Thank you for listening, for walking with me through this tapestry of words. May these stories travel across distance and time, binding us in unseen ways. Until the next veil lifts, may our path cross again.